A timid woman named Rose prepares for another day at her job at a fashion company. She often shows up late because she spends too much time overthinking her appearance, convinced she isn't attractive enough, especially whenever she compares herself to women with flawless skin. When she finally arrives at the office, she overhears her boss, Gunter, lecturing about the philosophy behind fashion. Despite being late, she takes a moment to steady herself before joining the others. But as soon as Gunter notices her, he publicly scolds her for her tardiness, accusing her of being careless, and even claiming she's already ruined his day. Rose tries to explain that she nearly got into a car accident, but Gunter cuts her off, saying he doesn't want to hear any excuses. The models and staff laugh at her embarrassment, turning her into the butt of their jokes. During lunch, Rose spots her close friend Chelsea, a model, chatting with a photographer named Brad. When Brad notices Rose, he invites her to a party later that evening. Rose politely declines, saying she isn't comfortable in social settings and would rather focus on her work. Surprisingly, Brad finds her honesty charming and asks her to be his date for the night. Rose is taken aback by his sudden offer, but she eventually accepts. After Brad leaves, Chelsea joins Rose and continues eating her favorite fast food, something she still enjoys despite being a model. Knowing Rose is a vegetarian, Chelsea teases her and asks how she can resist meat when it tastes so good. Rose explains that she doesn't like the idea of hurting animals and that eating meat feels like consuming something dead and revolting. When Chelsea learns that Rose plans to attend the party with Brad, she becomes thrilled and insists on helping her look stunning for the evening. That night, Rose arrives at the party but is immediately treated rudely by the security guards. Inside, she finds Brad, who leads her to a quieter corner. She quickly hides when she spots Gunter among the guests, then continues her conversation with Brad. They talk about their passions. Brad admits his love for photography, while Rose shares her dream of becoming a clothing designer. The more they talk, the closer they become, and soon there's a gentle spark between them. Later, Rose excuses herself to the restroom, where she overhears two women gossiping. They reveal that it was Chelsea who encouraged Brad to take her out. The women then begin mocking Rose's past, saying she grew up in an orphanage after losing her entire family in a car crash that left her badly scarred. They even pity Brad for being stuck with someone as ugly as her. Standing in silence, Rose listens to their cruel words, her heart sinking as the fragile confidence she had begins to crumble once again. Rose walks out to talk with Chelsea, heartbroken and sad. Chelsea admits that she's the one who asked Brad to go with her. When Rose hears this, she feels embarrassed. Rose says she never asked for her help, but Chelsea apologizes and says she only wants to help, says she never wanted to attend the party in the first place. Rose leaves the party angry and hurt. Unfortunately, on her way home, she gets into a terrible accident and loses consciousness. She then wakes up in a hospital, where her face is fully wrapped in bandages. Chelsea quickly informs the doctor when Rose wakes up, and the doctor asks if she remembers what happened. Rose tries to speak, but the doctor stops her and tells her not to. It is revealed that Rose has been in a coma for a week. The accident injured her jaw, and part of it can't be reattached, so Rose has a permanent scar on her face. The doctor uses wires to shut her mouth, and she has to wait some time before they can talk about facial reconstruction. Not only that, the doctor adds that Rose also suffers a torn wound on her stomach due to the accident. After hearing this, Rose asks the doctor if she can see her face. The doctor agrees, but tells Rose not to worry about her appearance because her face will get better over time. When Rose looks in a mirror, she confirms that her face is turned into something horrifying and begins to cry. Most of her facial skin is gone, and the wires locking her mouth make her look like a monster. But Chelsea assures her that what matters is that she's still alive. After being discharged from the hospital, Chelsea takes her home. She tells Rose that Brad sent her an email, and Chelsea apologizes for interfering in their relationship. Chelsea also says that Brad is a very good man, and he helps move Rose's belongings into her apartment. After that, Rose tries to resume her usual activities, especially eating and drinking, but struggles due to her mouth being nearly shut, so she can only feed herself through liquids. After seeing how ugly she has become, she checks her email and finds an invitation to visit a beauty clinic. There is a word called transhumanism, which is an idea being developed by doctors in a clinic aiming to push human evolution to become something better. In return, they allow Rose to try a new method to fix her face, and the clinic offers her free lifetime medical treatment. This catches Rose's interest, so she and Chelsea go to the clinic the next day, where a doctor named Burroughs explains that he and his wife founded the place to help people like Rose. Burroughs adds that the treatment involves cell manipulation, and although the process is still experimental, he promises to make her face better. Rose says she can't afford the treatment, but Burroughs says she doesn't have to pay because the place also acts as a research center and needs test subjects. Burroughs tells Rose how the experiment will work and then lets her decide whether she wants to proceed. Rose looks scared, but Chelsea encourages her to take the offer, saying it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, especially with a free beauty treatment in a luxury clinic. Finally, Rose becomes interested, and the doctors begin the test in a strange-looking operating room, where the doctors wear bright red clothes and the atmosphere feels eerie. There, they apply a jelly-like substance to Rose's skin, and the jelly starts to move around until finally, the operation is completed. Brad visits Rose when she starts to get better after a few days. As Brad finishes his visit, Burroughs stops him to speak with him. When Rose becomes conscious again, she begins to remove her bandages and discovers that she is now good-looking, her face fully healed, and she no longer needs her glasses. Moments later, she walks to the swimming pool and sees an actor named Dominic there. Rose immediately gets into the pool with him and starts talking. Then she begins to touch him aggressively, and suddenly, they share a sweet moment. When Rose pulls away, she realizes she has bitten Dominic's lip very hard, causing him to bleed. She then quickly runs out of the pool. The next day, when Burroughs checks on Rose, she tells him about what happened the night before, but Burroughs says that the operation causes her to have nightmares. Burroughs gives her some medicine and says the drug has a side effect of causing very vivid hallucinations. He also gives her a protein drink. Since Rose is fully recovered, Chelsea tells her to start designing clothes again. So Rose takes her sketchbook and pen and begins drawing her ideas. Not long after, Brad comes to visit her, and when she opens the door and he sees her, Brad is left speechless by her face. However, Rose is still very angry with him. Brad tries to ask her out, but Rose says she's busy. Because Brad won't leave, Rose pushes him out the door and shuts it. That night, Rose goes with Chelsea to a party, where Gunter sees her enter the club and says she looks healthy again. When he sees her dress and asks where it's from, Rose says she made it herself. That makes Gunter really happy, and he tells Rose to come back to work. The two women start getting drunk and dancing wildly at the club until they both go crazy at the party. To make things more exciting, Rose pulls a stranger into the crowd and becomes very aggressive toward him. Eventually, she scratches his stomach and bites his neck. Suddenly, Rose wakes up in her bed, feeling safe and healthy. Meanwhile, at Dominic's film shoot, he strangely becomes aggressive and unpredictable in his behavior. When the scene begins, he attacks his female co-star so hard that she begs him to let go. But Dominic yells at her for being unprofessional and starts shouting. The director tells them to calm down and says they can use his anger for another scene. Then, when another actor enters the scene, Dominic suddenly attacks him, throwing him to the ground. The director keeps filming, thinking it's part of the performance. But shortly after, Dominic bites the actor on the neck like a zombie, throwing the entire set into chaos as everyone panics. At the same time, Rose goes to take her medicine, but her stomach starts to hurt terribly with a loud gurgling sound. She drops the pills and screams in pain as she falls to the floor. After a while, when she wakes up, she feels normal again. She drinks the liquid Burroughs gave her and then searches for food in the fridge. When she can't think of anything else to eat, she grabs a pack of meat, places it on a plate, and starts licking the blood. Sometime later, two bouncers kick a man out of club. As he sees a girl in the distance, the man begins to flirt with her. The girl ignores him completely, which makes the man angry, and he starts yelling. Rose sees the man on the street and follows him to his car, where she asks for a ride. The man happily agrees and opens the door for her. Inside, Rose grabs his hand and slowly brings it to her mouth, which excites the man. But then Rose bites his hand, causing him to scream in pain. The man becomes furious, but Rose fights back and bites him, finishing him off. Suddenly, Rose wakes up in her bed again, but this time her fingers are covered in blood, and the coat she wore is hanging beside the bed. Meanwhile, at a hospital, a nurse working the night shift sees a patient crying in front of a mirror. The nurse tries to comfort her by saying her face will look better once she heals. But suddenly, the patient turns around and bites the nurse, revealing that he has turned into a zombie, and finally, the nurse dies. When security arrives to help, the zombie also bites them, and they struggle to stop it. Because her body starts feeling unwell, Rose goes back to the clinic and tells Burroughs about her constant nightmares and a terrible stomach pain. Burroughs says the dreams are caused by the medication, and the pain is a common symptom in people who are recovering. He adds that the side effect will go away on their own. After that, Rose returns to work where Gunter sees her sketches. Strangely, the designs look dark and disturbing. Rose tries to stop him from looking, but Gunter actually loves them. He says her drawings represent the dark side, and he wants to add one of her dresses to his collection. Rose is thrilled by the opportunity and happily accepts it. At a hospital, a doctor tells someone from the Center for Disease Control that the zombie disease seems to be caused by a type of rabies that has become hyperactive, but the origin of the strain is still unknown. Dominic turns out to be the first known infected person. They visit him, and now he is tied to a bed because he is so angry and aggressive that he can't control himself. Meanwhile, at Rose's workplace, Brad asks if she still wants to keep her distance from him. Rose says she is busy and has to go to the doctor. When Brad asks why, Rose says she has a new taste in food. Brad sees this as a chance to ask her out to lunch, and Rose agrees. At the restaurant, Brad tries to gently touch Rose's face. But when Rose sees Brad's hand, she feels tempted to bite it. She holds back by biting her own tongue. She says she has to go to the restroom, where she looks in a mirror and opens her mouth. She sees something sharp growing near her teeth and a strange object forming under her tongue. She decides to go home immediately. Suddenly, a zombie outside spots her through the window and rushes toward her. Brad pulls the zombie away from Rose and hits its head with a fire extinguisher, killing it. He then looks for Rose, but she is already gone. Meanwhile, at the hospital, the nurse who got bitten by the zombie earlier now shows the same symptoms, especially constantly drooling. The doctor says the virus disrupts the brain's function and makes people go insane, and that's what causes them to become extremely angry and violent, like zombies. Therefore, the healthcare workers and the doctor decide to vaccinate people who are not infected yet and keep the infected ones separated from the others until they expire. The doctor wants to tell the world about the virus and its effects, but the healthcare worker strongly disagrees, saying that it could cause mass panic and that this situation needs to be handled carefully. From a street, Rose's screams are heard. She sees her own face in a mirror, which has now become horribly deformed. She then falls to the ground and crawls until a man approaches her and tries to comfort her. But Rose keeps turning her face away and walks off. Still, the man follows her into a dark hallway, where Rose is already transformed into something that looks like it comes from another planet. And finally, the man dies. Rose then has a strange dream about creepy doctors walking around and wrapping the face of a woman wearing her dress design. She gets curious about the woman's face, so she unwraps it, only to find that the face is horribly disfigured. Rose is shocked when she wakes up from her nightmare again, so she calls Burroughs and leaves a message about her pain and nightmares. She then checks her mouth and sees that everything looks fine. But when she drops her protein drink prescribed by the doctor while trying to drink it, Rose sees that the contents of the bottle are actually filled with blood. At work, Rose tells Chelsea to wear the dress she made for Gunter's new collection. Brad comes to Rose after Chelsea leaves and asks about their first date. Rose says she has been sick and doesn't even remember going back home. But Brad reveals that he is the one who took her home, which confuses Rose, though she thanks him. Gunter calls Rose while Chelsea stands nearby, and Rose realizes Gunter wants some changes. So Rose makes some alterations to the dress. It turns out the changes she makes please Gunter a lot, and he says Chelsea will close the fashion show wearing this dress. As a result, the women scream with joy, as this is their biggest dream coming true. Meanwhile, a public announcement is made about a rabies outbreak on the night of the fashion show, telling people to avoid animals and others acting aggressively and to stay at home. When a reporter asks Gunter why he still holds the fashion show while the zombie outbreak spreads, he says that fashion never stops for anyone or anything, so the show must go on. At that moment, Rose realizes Chelsea hasn't shown up backstage yet, just before Burroughs calls her and says she needs to return to the clinic soon. But Rose says she is busy and will only be able to see him tomorrow. Unknown to Rose, Chelsea has already arrived and tells the other models that a woman bit her on the way. Then a makeup artist pulls her in to get ready for the show. At that moment, Rose comes out to call Chelsea, but suddenly her stomach pain returns. Two men approach her, but instead of helping, they take out their phones to film her. Suddenly, something strange, like a tentacle, comes out from Rose's armpit and goes into one of the men's throats, and finally, he dies. Brad shows up behind the man who's filming Rose, then punches him and deletes the video. After that, Brad injects Rose with something and carries her away. Soon after, the man whom Rose killed earlier is seen alive again, now reanimated as a zombie, and he turns his head toward Rose and Brad. Rose then wakes up in front of the changing room mirror, feeling weak and confused as she begins to walk, until she gets a vision of Brad taking pictures of her while she is asleep. Brad comes and tells Rose that she fainted earlier, so he asks her to come with him to the clinic, but Rose refuses to go until she sees her dress appear in the fashion show finale. Rose then sits next to Gunter as the fashion show starts. Cheers and applause come from the audience as the models walk the runway. A male model becomes dizzy on the catwalk. After regaining his balance and trying to continue walking, he ends up tripping and falling off the stage. Slowly, he pulls himself back and walks off stage, prompting the audience to cheer as he leaves, and the show goes on. Brad tells Rose again that they need to leave immediately, but Rose refuses once more. At that moment, a scream is heard from backstage. A wounded model crawls out, and Rose tries to approach her, but Brad pulls her away. It's time for Chelsea to walk onto the stage, and she has already turned into a zombie. She starts attacking the models while Gunter yells at her for ruining his event, but Chelsea doesn't care and attacks him, killing the fashion boss in the end. The reanimated man then enters, now mutated, so the police immediately shoot him down. Chelsea stands up and sees Rose screaming, so the police shoot Chelsea too, and finally, Rose's best friend dies. Rose is devastated, but Brad quickly pulls her away and takes her to Burroughs' clinic. Brad tells Burroughs that things are out of control when they arrive, but Burroughs says not to worry about anything. Rose thinks she is the one who caused the virus in the first place because everything around her keeps going wrong. But Burroughs says that Rose can still stop the spread if she does something. So he instructs Rose and Brad to enter a room and locks them in once they are inside. Through the glass, Burroughs reveals that he hired Brad to watch over Rose, and Rose looks at Brad in shock. Burroughs says that Brad, who is a writer, wanted a story, and this experiment is perfect for him. Brad says it's not true and that he only wants to protect Rose because he loves her, but Rose doesn't believe him and pushes him away. Brad starts banging on the glass and yelling at Burroughs, but Burroughs doesn't care. He presses a button, and blood rains down on Brad from above. This triggers Rose again, and Burroughs cheers her on as Brad retreats to a corner. A strange creature with bizarre body parts reaches for Brad's shoulder, so he backs away in fear and pulls out his knife. Burroughs says the creature is his wife, who gave her body for science after learning her cancer couldn't be cured, and she is the greatest step forward in this research. Suddenly, Brad's throat is torn by Rose's hungry tentacle, but she cuts her own tentacle using Brad's knife. Unfortunately, he has already lost too much blood, and finally he dies. Rose also attacks the monster wife with the knife, slashes and stabs her repeatedly, and finally, she dies. Because she does not want the virus to spread to other people again, Rose decides to do something unthinkable to herself, and finally, she dies, which makes Burroughs feel disbelief. Some time passes, and a news anchor speaks in the distance. The news anchor informs about a deadly rabies outbreak and what causes it, and also says that the virus is a very dangerous type of flu, which no longer exists. At that moment, Burroughs cooks meat with a mixture of blood until the meat cooks, accompanied by blood juice that he brings to someone in another room. When Burroughs returns and looks through the glass again, it turns out that Rose still lives, lying in the same red room. She checks herself and finds out that she is already okay, and she sees the body of a monster wife still lying in that room. When Burroughs talks to Rose, she feels surprised that the wound on her neck has already healed, and she thinks that Burroughs uses transhumanism again. Rabbit movie ends with Burroughs saying that the foundation of immortality is the most expensive thing, which makes Rose feel frustrated and bang on the glass in anger. And finally, the mad doctor laughs hysterically. Watch other movie recaps by clicking on the screen on the left.